الصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. We're going to start the program with the recitation of the Holy Quran. Muhammad Valji. Let's welcome the salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال نعم وإنكم إذا لمن المقربين. قال لهم موسى ألقوا ما أنتم ملقون. فألقوا حبالهم وعصيهم وقالوا بعزة فرعون إنا لنحن الغالبون. فألقى موسى عصاه فإذا هي تلقف ما يأفكون. فألقي السحرة ساجدين قالوا آمنا برب العالمين رب موسى وهارون. قال آمنتم له قبل أن آذن لكم إنه لكبيركم الذي علمكم السحر فلسوف تعلمون. لأقطعن أيديكم وأرجلكم من خلاف ولأصلبنكم أجمعين. ولأصلبنكم أجمعين. قالوا لا ضير إنا إلى ربنا منقلبون. إنا نطمع أن يغفر لنا ربنا خطايانا. إنا نطمع أن يغفر لنا ربنا خطايانا أن كنا أول المؤمنين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على رسول الله على رسول الله وآله الأطهار
پر محمد و آل محمد صلوات برباد ہو نہ دشت میں یا رب چمن کوئی لاشوں پہ لاش دیکھنا یوں بے وطن کوئی برباد ہو نہ دشت میں یا رب چمن کوئی مظلومی حسین پر گریا ہے کائنات مظلومی حسین پر گریا ہے کائنات شبیر سا ہوا نہ غریب بلوطن کوئی شبیر سا ہوا نہ غریب بلوطن کوئی برباد ہو نہ دشت میں یا رب چمن کوئی کہہ دے کوئی زمین سے نگل لے فرات کو کہہ دے کوئی زمین سے نگل لے فرات کو ساحل پہ 3 دن سے ہے تشنا دہن کوئی ساحل پہ 3 دن سے ہے تشنا دہن کوئی برباد ہو نہ دشت میں یا رب چمن کوئی اصغر کے منہ کو چوم کے خون رو دیے حسین اصغر کے منہ کو چوم کے خون رو دیے حسین یاد آ گئی صغیر کی بچھڑی بہن کوئی یاد آ گئی صغیر کی بچھڑی بہن کوئی برباد ہو نہ دشت میں یا رب چمن کوئی برچھی کا پھل کلیج میں پیوست جب ہوا برچھی کا پھل کلیج میں پیوست جب ہوا تڑپا سلگتی ریت پر گل پیرہن کوئی تڑپا سلگتی ریت پر گل پیرہن کوئی برباد ہو نہ دشت میں یا رب چمن کوئی لاشوں پہ لاش دیکھنا یوں بے وطن کوئی محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم.
Thank you very much, Sahel. Thank you for that beautiful recitation. Brothers and sisters, the next part of our program is spoken word by Fatima Valji. Please welcome her with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Decades ago, Ghassan Kanafani stated, "Imperialism has laid its body over the world, the head in Eastern Asia, the heart in the Middle East, its arteries reaching Africa and Latin America. Wherever you strike it, you damage it, and you serve the world revolution." I've been thinking about whether our resistance aligns with Husseini principles. Does our solidarity transcend borders, race, culture, sect, even faith? Or is it selective, with varying degrees of affinity, reflecting a hierarchy of advocacy? I wrote this poem whilst considering how the oppression of Black Americans and Palestinians converge, and as a reminder to uphold and work on the basis that truly none of us are free until all of us are free. The poem is called Solidarity. I know the blood-curdling dread of a gun's cold barrel pressed into my clammy neck, arms twisted so far back, I feel a searing, jarring crack before all goes black. I know the choking pain when the cool muzzle is replaced by pressure so suffocating there's no relief until my writhing limbs go limp. I know prison cells dark as hell, designed to dehumanize, control, and terrorize. And yet, the struggles of Black Americans and stateless Palestinians coincide beyond our partially parallel lives. Our fate and fight are intertwined by American-Israeli collusion and lies, enabling the world's last white settler colony to thrive on the blood and brutality of war crimes, checkpoints, curfews, and apartheid. So as I'm suffocated by white cops and close my tired eyes, your tears and agony are also mine. For the power that threaten our Black American lives also sanction and support Palestinian occupation, expulsion, erasure, genocide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. We now come to the main talk by Shaykh Mohamed Yasin Devji. Please welcome him with a loud salawat. Ala Muhammad wa ala. Brothers and sisters, can I ask you to move as far forward as possible to allow others to join? Shaykh Mohamed Yasin Devji studied in the seminaries of Qom and Syria for 16 years. He has a BA in Islamic philosophy, mysticism, and his area of interest include Transcendental philosophy, Islamic mysticism, Qur'anic exegesis, and spiritual psychology. He's continuing his series entitled Between Wound and Wholeness, Building Safe Communities in Light of the Qur'an and Karbala.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين لا سيما خاتمهم وأفضلهم محمد مصطفى صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى أهل بيت الطهارة لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. Please recite a salawat. MashaAllah. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa alal arwah allati hallat bifinaik. عليك مني جميعا عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جهله الله آخر أحد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وقوله الحق واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فانقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected scholars, my elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight's dedication is dedicated to a broad segment of our population, and it is to those who suffer. Those who suffer can be those who face existential crisis and oppression in different parts of the world, all the way to those who are seated in this gathering tonight, who suffer in silence, whether it be grief, whether it be mental health issues, whether it be financial issues. So tonight's lecture is dedicated to all who suffer. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ease the suffering of all of those suffering. Be it those who existentially suffer, are being bombed and forced under rubble, who suffer from lack of food, lack of water, lack of access to basic things, whose humanity has been marginalized, ignored, to those of us seated in this gathering who suffer in silence. Please recite a loud salawat to honor all those who are suffering. As we recap where we began and where we find ourselves, in our first lecture, we started by identifying what the wound is. The wound in what? The wound that is the block in building a safe community, right? We talked about the honesty of what the wound is and how we carry it. We then learned that aman, the Islamic concept of safety, is not just the absence of something, but rather aman is something deeper. It is not the absence, but rather the presence of something. It carries the same root as iman and al-amin. We then looked at that concept and tied it to the very message of Imam al-Hussein, which was what? Which was to bring islah, reform within the ummah. And how in order to bring islah, there needs to be safety. We talked about islah and how it is not just a flat political concept, but rather islah is multidimensional. We talked about it across the dimensions of social, psychological, and spiritual, right? We then came to the keystone of that talk to say that our safety lies in the end in our orientation towards what? Towards the rope of Allah together, jami'an. On the second night, we turned away from the wound and oriented ourselves toward the first mention of healing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks in the ayah about, which was what? فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. He joined the hearts. The joining, we understood, is a godly and divine act, not ours. Our task is to build the conditions necessary which can then allow this joining to take hold. And last night, we talked about one of the first and the most fundamental conditions of building a safe community, which was what? Which was aman. And aman as the ground and the safe soil within which the seed can then grow and become stable. We talked about what that safety looks like by way of the example of Safwan, the polytheist at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then we looked at what the fruit of what that safety looks like over decades in the life of Habib ibn Madahir. So we have laid the ground, we've begun to lay the groundwork for what a safe community looks like. Tonight we ask, the question is, what grows? What is it that grows within this safety? If we go back to our verse again, what is it? He joined the hearts. Allah joined the hearts. But not just joined the hearts. What is it? فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. So you became brothers by His blessing. The joining of the hearts produces something with a name, which is what? It produces ukhuwa, brotherhood. Now, I use the Arabic term ukhuwa, which is brotherhood, but needless to say, ukhuwa also includes my sisters, which is also sisterhood. So brotherhood and sisterhood, right? Tonight, we look at the bond itself. What actually is ukhuwa in Islam, right? What is it made of? And if that ukhuwa is rooted in our Islamic and Quranic principles, what is it when it looks like when it's real and no walls around it? Please recite a salawat.
Brothers and sisters, can I ask you to move as far forward as possible to allow others to join? There's people still waiting outside.
Please recite a salawat. We look at the word brother, right, or sister, and we use it. It has become such a loose term in our vocabulary that perhaps the tendency is there to strip it of its meaning, right? It becomes empty. We call a person brother, right? We call a person brother in the car park or as a volunteer, right? But would we lend that brother money if that brother required a loan from us, right? Would we sit with him in his struggles and his grief, right? Would we notice if that particular brother, we didn't see them for a month, right? We have turned brother into a greeting, right? The Quran, however, takes this word and treats it far more seriously. The Quran actually makes it a bond, and a bond that contains responsibility and obligation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says what? He says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. The faithful are indeed brothers. Surah 49, verse 10. Innama, right? Indeed, only, none other than. It does not say that the believers are like brothers. It says, no, the believers are brothers. It is a declaration of the fact that the believers are in fact brothers. Brotherhood is not a metaphor, right, describing how nicely we treat each other. It is the actual ontological status that the joining of the hearts that we talked about confers upon a society, right? And the verse does not just leave it with a warm feeling. It actually continues and it attaches a duty to it, saying what? The verse continues, so make peace between your brothers. The moment it names the bond, immediately afterward, it names the work that the bond requires. Real brotherhood obligates upon each and every one of us. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not only bring this concept to be admired and did not introduce this concept just to be admired. He built it deliberately. The moment he entered Medina, an act took place which was called the muakhat, right? The making of brotherhood. And there were the joining of two people here, not one. God, as we talked about last night, had already brought together the Aus and the Khazraj to form the Ansar. And we talked about the journey of how these two warring factions were brought together to become one brotherhood, right? Here now, it is the Ansar. It is the Ansar welcoming who? The Muhajirin, the emigrants, right? The emigrants, as we know in history, arrived with nothing. They had left their wealth behind. They had left, many of them have left their families, their possessions, everything. They came empty-handed to Medina, to the new city, right? And yet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the Prophet to declare the Ansar and the Muhajirin as brothers. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean practically? We hear about this brotherhood, but what was the cost? Because this is where the word brother stops being just a word, right? The Ansar did not just welcome the Muhajirin with warm wishes, ahlan wa sahlan, welcome to Medina, and get on with it. No. They were commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to offer half. Half of their wealth, half of their homes, half of everything. A man would turn to a stranger and say, this is everything I own, half of it is yours. Right? So binding was this command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that for a time, this brotherhood that was formed was actually within it a legislation for these people who were not kin to actually inherit from one another. Until the abrogated verse came down, which then restored it back to blood relations. But for a time, a Muhajir and an Ansar, in that period of time, were actually legally bound to inherit from one another. Right? This is how load-bearing Allah and His Prophet made the word brother. And we notice the subtlety buried in the formula. We look at who were the established insiders at this point? It was the Ansar. The Ansar were settled, secure, and very much at home. And who were the empty-handed arrivals? The Muhajirin. The Prophet bound the secure host and the penniless newcomers as equals, neither above the other, each one's gift meaningless without the other. He did not wait for them to like one another. The bond was assigned, built straight across the lines of blood and the comfort we like to keep to ourselves. Please recite a salawat. And what was it that bonded them? Again, what was it that bonded them? We go back to yesterday. We go back to the beginning. What was it? What was this bond made of? It was not made of blood. It was not made of tribe. It was not made of affinity. It goes back to what? It goes back to the rope. The rope of Allah. Tasimu bihablillah jami'an. Right? Take hold of the rope together. That was the bond. They did not become brothers by turning to face each other. They became brothers as they took hold of the rope and held it together. The brotherhood is a byproduct of a shared grip of that vertical rope. What was that vertical rope? We said that vertical rope was La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Two people or two groups of people holding the same rope from wherever they stood, in whatever circumstances they found themselves, already bound to one another through it, even if they had never met, even if everything about them differs. This is the thing I want to say tonight, and I will say it plainly. There are two ways a group of human beings can be bound together. This is the view of the Muslim sociologist that I'm presenting to you, right? The first is the natural bond, right? What the scholars of Islamic scholars of sociology call asabiyya, right? The solidarity of blood, of tribe, of shared origin, of shared interest. It is powerful. Empires have been built on it, right? But it has two fatal features, the sociologists say. It is exclusive by its very nature. Number one, it is exclusive by its very nature, right? It binds us, it binds one group of people while excluding another group of people. And the natural feature of that, they opine, is that it ends up consuming itself. Why? Because a bond based on what we call our own kind will always look inward to try to distinguish itself by an inner own kind. Right? Meaning what? Meaning that tribes will then look towards clans. Clans will look towards greater extended families. Extended families will look towards internal families. And the factions continued, right? Blood solidarity cannot stop, by design, cannot stop fragmenting because there is no fixed center. There is no fixed center at it other than maintaining that exclusivity. The second bond, the scholars of sociology opine, is the bond of ukhuwa. And this is built on the opposite principle, which is what? It is not horizontal solidarity against an outsider. Rather, it is a shared grip on the vertical rope, that center we talk about. Whereas we see in asabiyya, it is strictly horizontal. There is no center binding it. In ukhuwa, there is a center binding it together, which is what? Which is the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That rope which is infinite and central and available to anyone and is not exclusive in its nature. So long as you are in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, you have a place of belonging. You have no right to be othered, right? You have no right to be excluded, but you are welcome and included within that particular system. Please recite a salawat. There is no own kind to defend because the center is not us. The center is the rope of Allah. The center is Him. Asabiyya asks of us, what? Are you one of us by blood? Whereas ukhuwa asks, are you holding the rope? Two different requirements to belong. And this is why a man like Salman could become not merely as accepted, but central in where he found himself. Salman, as we know, was a Persian. He was non-Arab, a former slave, a man who had passed through Zoroastrianism, Christianity before he found his way to the Prophet. An outsider by every measure. In 5th century Arabia, outsider by every measure, right? And the Prophet said of him what? Salman minna ahlul bayt. Salman is of us, the people of the house. Not tolerated, not included on sufferance, rather brought into the innermost circle, the Ahlul Bayt itself. Because the bond was never about where Salman came from. I repeat, the bond with Salman was never about where he came from, but where he was, right? It was about the rope that Salman had seized with both hands. Now, we turn the mirror on us, right? Because we talk about, please recite a salawat. We talk about, I'm not the first one to talk about Salman. We've been hearing about Salman for most of our lives, right? And it's easy to admire the story of Salman, right? But ourselves miss something. Notice, understand something. It's important I say this because it provides a frame of reference also going forward for the talks. When we talk about the wounds that our community faces, right? It's important to realize that each and every one of us will look at the community and the wounds that it suffers from our own frame of reference, right? It could be a situation that you belong to a community, right, that does not have, that the manifestation of the wound will differ, right? So some of the examples I might give, you might feel as a community, it doesn't necessarily apply to us. But that does not negate the fact that the wound does not exist. It perhaps manifests differently, right? And so, again, the reason why I mention this is because when we become aware of the wound, it allows us to then gain that awareness of how that wound manifests within our community, right? So I'm not talking about, again, even when we talk about Salman, I'm not talking about outright cruelty. I don't sit in front of a community today who is openly racist, right? Who is openly supremacist, who openly, maliciously looks to other someone or to exclude someone. That's not what I'm looking at here, right? But the thing is about asabiyya that makes it hard to see from the inside is that it never feels like hatred, right? It feels like comfort, like our own people, like nothing at all. The bond rarely fails where we are malicious. It fails when we are comfortable and unaware of the wounds that we carry. Let me give you the smallest example and watch how much it might hold for you. We walk into a center, we walk into a majlis. Without a single conscious thought, we move straight to the faces we already know, right? our family, our friends, the ones we are easy with, right? We embrace them, we sit with them, we laugh with them, right? And somewhere near the edge of the room stands someone who knows no one. Someone new to the city, someone just visiting, someone carrying a grief that none of us can see. And they stand there throughout the entire program and leave exactly as they entered the hall, right? Unspoken to. And here is the part I want us to sit with. Nobody consciously or maliciously acted to disclude them or to make them feel not included. We were not cruel to them. We did not look at that person and choose to leave them alone. We simply drifted and very subconsciously went in our directions, right? The way water drifts downhill towards our own, towards what is familiar. That drift, that effortless, invisible, utterly pull towards the familiar is asabiya in its quietest form, right? And it can run an entire community without one malicious heart being present in the building. Now, multiply that single small drift across 1,000 moments. Who we greet, who we are seated beside, right? Whose name we bother to learn, whose child we make room for, whose grief we actually show up for, right? Please recite a salawat. Right? And we either have a brotherhood or we have a set of tribes that happen to pray in the same building. And the frightening part is that the second one feels exactly like the first from the inside. Right? Everyone is warm. Everyone is kind. Everyone is amongst friends. It is only the one on the edge who can feel that wall. Because the wall was built precisely out of our comfort with one another. So the question Uhuwa really puts to us was never who is one of us. We are far too kind to answer that one wrongly out loud. The real question is much subtler and much harder. Who did I not walk toward tonight and why? Who did I not approach tonight and why did I not approach that? Right? I want to share with you a concrete example because we can listen to this and it's easy to nod and say, okay, we nod along to the hidden, these are the hidden hierarchies that exist inside of us, while falling into the trap of assuming that we don't carry these hidden hierarchies inside of us. I'll share with you an exercise. It's a very profound exercise. Please recite a salawat. And before I share this with you, I also want to emphasize, I don't exclude myself from this, yeah? And when I share with you the exercise, you'll understand. I also, in my growing up, in being part of a community, it wasn't until two very profound exercises or things that I saw in my life made me realize and turn the mirror on myself and say, whoa, wait a minute, okay. You also carry this wound inside of you. The first, right, was in my own therapeutic training, right? As a part of my training, there was a lot of group and partnership exercises. So we'd sit in a circle in my cohort, and the supervisor would say, okay, we're going to put you off into groups, and we're going to partner you off, right? It is very interesting. They said, we won't put you into groups. You are responsible for picking your partners, and you are responsible for making your own groups. But what they said is that we want you to be aware of something as you pick a partner and as you pick a group. Think about who you gravitate towards. Think about who you go towards. And think about consciously who you avoid. Right? Who do you draw towards? And who do you repel? And I thought to myself, wow, that's interesting, right? And they went on to say that the ones you don't go towards, ask yourself a question. Why do you not go towards them? Why is it you don't move towards them, right? Think about and ask yourself why. And on top of that, when you look around to make a partner or to make a group, the ones that you normally wouldn't go towards, When you've asked yourself this question, then go there and become partners with that person or join that group, right? Why am I pulled towards this one and not that one? What is it in me that reaches for the first and quietly avoids the second? I invite you to try this exercise, right? Try it now, not in this room, not with your eyes. You needn't stare at anybody, you make them uncomfortable, but in your heart. Who here would you naturally gravitate toward? And who would you not? The one whose language you don't share? The one whose clothes are too different or not different enough? The one who is too poor? The one who is too rich? Or too broken? Or too strange? Or too simple? Or just simply too much? Right? And then ask the question that actually matters. Why? Why is it like that? Because there is an answer. There is always an answer. It is the map of our own hidden hierarchy that exists inside of us. It is the asabiya when the lights of awareness are off, living quietly in yours and my chest. And in mine, right, for example, deciding for us. So that asabiya then decides for us, beneath our own awareness, who is fully a brother to us and who do we merely simply tolerate, right? Before I get to the answer, right? The second thing that had a profound effect on me as it pertains to my interpersonal relationships and who I interact with and who I gravitate towards and who not, was taught to me by my teacher in Qum, rahmatullah alayh. He had a very interesting habit. This man, I would walk with him and we would walk for 30 to 40 minutes. And I kid you not, we would walk down the street in Qum and there is not one person that he would not say salam to. Irrespective. Now, I'll paint you the context. These are the streets of Qum. This man is an African man. Okay, so he's already different. Okay? Walking down these streets, student, non-student, shopkeeper, man, woman, whatever. He would walk down the street and he would not pass anyone except that he would say salam. And not only say salam alaikum with a big smile on his face. Right? And I thought to myself, I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. So I thought, this is very admirable because you hear about the life of the Prophet. You hear that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was not that you would greet him and he would not say salam to you. In fact, there's a story that the companions would actually try to surprise him so they could get the jump on him to say salam. Nobody was successful. It was the Prophet at the end of the day, right? So I thought, this is a prophetic sunnah playing out in front of me. So I thought, you know what? I was in the city one day. I'm like, let me try this. And I got to tell you, it was hard. Just walking through the street, it was an exercise in almost forcing myself to say salam to everybody. Now, as I reflect on it now, it was about my own insecurities. My own insecurities, what are they going to think? They think this is random guy saying salam to them, what are they going to think? So it all came back to me. It was my own insecurity. Whereas if I, in those moments, had let go of my own insecurities, and those insecurities also then drive that hierarchy that we talked about. Had I let go of that insecurity, it would be very easy for me to walk up to anybody and say salam with a smile on my face. What have I got to lose? Right? Please recite a salawat. So when we talk about this, right, there's something important to clarify here because it is one of the most important things I will say tonight. And I don't want a single person in this audience or listening online to walk out of here feeling any type of shame. This is not about shaming anybody because there's nothing to be ashamed of, right? That pull towards some and that push away from others is not our sin. Listen to me carefully. That is not our sin. We did not choose it. For most of us, this was handed to us. This was handed to us. Why? It was handed to us by the way we were raised, by what we were taught to fear, by the wounds that were projected onto us long before we were old enough to even become aware of them. Right? The pull is a wound. not a crime. The pull and the push is not a crime. It is a wound. We are not guilty for carrying that, brothers and sisters. Becoming aware of it is not the crime. We're not guilty, right? However, what we build with the awareness of that wound then becomes a responsibility on each and every one of us, right? We become answerable for it, right? Up until the point we identify and become aware of the wound, Allah's mercy covers us. Mercy then switches to responsibility when that awareness comes about within us. And when that awareness comes, this is when mercy turns to responsibility, and Allah now has the right to judge. We are not condemned for what was handed to us instinctively by our conditioning and what we did not reach for. We are only asked now to reach for it anyways. And that deliberate reaching towards the one who we would not naturally have chosen is the essence of ukhuwa in action. Not the warm feeling toward the brother we already like. The chosen, effortful extension of the rope toward the hand that our wound would not otherwise gravitate towards or would miss. This is the bond that the Prophet built. This is the bond we are asked to build. And notice what we are offering when we do reach for the one on the edge. Not a place they must earn by becoming like us. Not a test of whether they can perform our culture, our accent, our way of being, right? Well enough to be let in. That is merely fitting in. The exhausting contortion of hiding whoever you actually are until there's only an acceptable version of yourself left. And that is one of the quietest destroyers of a human soul, because it teaches a person who they truly are was never welcomed to begin with. So the real test of a community is simple. Can a person belong here without becoming someone else first? If yes, it is ukhuwa. It is brotherhood. If they must contort into our shape to be let in, then it is only tribalism dressed in the garb of religion. Please recite a salawat. And there was one man, please recite a salawat. And there was one man at Karbala who proves this past all argument. He did not come from a different tribe or a different land or a humble background. He came from the enemy's army. He was a commander in that army. He was the one who had blocked Imam's path, who had denied him water and driven him and his caravan to the very place where death was a certainty. If any human being had placed himself beyond the wall of brotherhood, it was this man. By the very logic of every tribe and group that existed, he was the last person who was meant to be received, or who could ever be received. And when, on the morning of Ashura, the weight of it finally broke, of what he had done finally broke him, when he let go of the sword and turned trembling towards that rope, he was not made to earn his way back across years of penance. In a single afternoon, the brotherhood of Hussein opened and received him in his entirety and completely. The Imam embraced him and gave him a word that echoes the very word that the Prophet had once given Amir al-Mu'mineen in brotherhood. A brother in this world and the next. To Hur, he said, free in this world and free in the next. The enemy commander, in one turning, became a brother of the Ahlul Bayt, because the bond was never about his record. It was only ever about the rope that he decided to finally seize. Let us go now to the story of Al-Hur. The desert sun beat down on Karbala. The 10th of Muharram had dawned. Swords were drawn, lines were marked, and the sky itself seemed to hesitate. Among the commanders of the enemy stood a man trembling. His hands fidgeted, His lips murmured verses no one could hear. His name was Al-Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, once a respected general in the army of Kufa, the man who had blocked Imam al-Husayn's caravan from returning to Medina, or to Kufa, the man who had led them to Karbala. And now the weight of that choice was crushing him. I see myself between paradise and hell. By God, I will not choose anything over paradise, even if I am cut into pieces and burned. He could take it no longer. He turned to his horse, tied his sword tightly, and galloped across the burning plain toward the camp he once cornered. His heart raced faster than his steed. Dust rose behind him. Cries erupted in the enemy ranks. Hur has betrayed us. As he neared the tents of the Ahlul Bayt, he threw down his weapon, dismounted, and called out, "O Hussein, I am the one who brought you here. I gave you no water. I closed every door of escape. Is there forgiveness for someone like me?" Imam al-Hussein looked at him, this once commanding figure, now a broken man. He stepped forward, embraced him, and said, "Yes, Hur, you are free as your mother named you. Free in this world, free in the next." Hur wept. Tears soaked his beard. He had chained the caravan, but now his heart had broken those very chains. He turned to the Imam. "Let me go first. I was the first to wound you. Let me be the first to protect you." Imam al-Hussein nodded. And so, according to narrations, Hur rode forth, no longer as a general of the Yazidi army, but the servant of Imam al-Hussein. He fought with fire unmatched. Witnesses say he fought with the rage of 1,000 regrets and the hope of a forgiven soul. He struck down many of the enemy soldiers until he was surrounded. At last, he fell with multiple wounds. Imam al-Hussein rushed to his side and knelt beside him, lifted his head and placed it in his lap. "O Hur," he whispered, "you are free now. Rest, O night of repentance." The desert bore witness. The enemy lost a commander, but the heavens gained a martyr. The free man. Above the plain in burnished mail, he sat his horse and yet turned pale. A captain of the conqueror's host, the man with power over the most. He wore no chain the eye could see, yet no man there was less than free. For in his chest the iron pulled, it shackled him with thousands ruled. To what he'd done, the roads he'd closed, the wells denied, the march imposed. And so he shook within his soul. 2 roads had opened, and the whole of Karbala went still to learn which way a trembling man would turn. A fire behind, a garden far, and he between them held ajar. Undone, unsure, he could have stayed, looked off and told himself, obey. Instead he turned the rein. He broke the line, he crossed the plain. And at his back the cry, the shame, Hur has betrayed us as his name. Ran on ahead, he reached the few. He'd cornered through his blade and knew. He carried nothing but his guilt, to ask if mercy could be built. And mercy came, the Imam rose, and gave the name no captain chose. Not traitor, not the one who barred, but free, his mother's word, unmarred. Free in this world, the Imam said, and free in the next that lies ahead. And there the chains he'd worn let go. The trembling stopped, and standing so, unbound at last, he begged to be the first to fall, that blood might free. The breath he'd keep, and so repay the debt his own hands made that day. He fought, he fell, and Hussein came, knelt low and breathed across his name. Rest now, O night of penitence. The man who'd raised the high defense, the wall around the Prophet's seed, died with no wall, unchained and freed. No line, no fear, no barred command between his soul and the beloved's hand. The only prisoner on that plain who broke his chains and rose again. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas sami'ul alim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
يا حسين أنت حررت العبيد. يا حسين ذكرك صار نشيد. يا حسين قطعوا منك الوريد. يا حسين يا غريبا يا شهيد. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. تھی یہ سب کو خبر یہ جہاں سب ہے تیرا، ہاں مگر یہ صلہ تجھ کو امت سے ملا تھا. تیرا سارا تن تیروں سے اتنا بھرا، گر کے پھر رک گیا تیروں پہ لاشا تیرا. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. انت قربان الالہ انت للدین فداء، دمك السال علا قدس الباري سنا. يا حسين يا حسين صرت للدنيا منار. يا حسين يا حسين ذكرك أضحى شعار. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. How Yazid tried to bury your name into the sand, covered up Karbala, but this was Allah's command, that Hussein will live on in this world, in every land. Till the end we will mourn our master's final stand. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. ہر جوان پیر کے دل سے اٹھتی ہے صدا، اپنے خون سے جلائے غم شہ کا دیا. زندگی کچھ نہیں گر نہ ہو شہ کی عزا، اس کی خواہ خاطر کریں کہ ہم اپنی جاں فدا. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. جس لیے ہائے زینب تڑپتی رہ گئی، جس لیے عمر بھر رویا عابد خون بھی. میری ماں یہ بہن تم ردا پہنا کرو، شام کے داستان سے ملا کیا کچھ نہیں. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. درس یہ مل رہا ہے ہمیں آپاس سے، اپنے پاس اگر جسم سے دونوں کٹے، جسم سے خون کا دریا اگر بہتا رہے، بس ہمیں شاہ حسین بے وفا جاری رہے. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. شام میں ہائے بے چین دل زینب کا تھا، چاہتی تھی کہ ماتم کرے شبیر کا. ہم خون میں گئے ہاتھ تھے گردن پسے، دیکھ کے اس کی مجبوری بولا یہ خدا. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین. یہ زمین آسمان کہہ رہا ہے یا حسین، مومنوں کے لہو میں بہہ رہا ہے یا حسین.
زيارة. السلام عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا محمد بن عبد الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك وعلى زوجتك الوفية الغراء خديجة الكبرى أم المؤمنين. السلام عليك وعلى ابن عمك أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب وصي رسول رب العالمين. السلام عليك وعلى بضعتك الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك وعلى ولديك الإمامين الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك وعلى أئمة المسلمين من ذرية ولدك الحسين علي السجاد ومحمد الباقر وجعفر الصادق وموسى الكاظم وعلي الرضا محمد الجواد وعلي الهادي والحسن العسكري والحجة ابن الحسن المهدي. السلام عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا صاحب الزمان، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك، وجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك والمستشهدين بين يديك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. فصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآل الطيبين الطاهرين. Brothers and sisters, just a few quick announcements. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll continue with our Muharram program. The children's program begins at 7:15 for those who are registered, and the main program at 7:30. Tomorrow, being Saturday, we have the extended question and answer session, which takes place after the main talk, inshallah, so at about 8:45 p.m., and then we will have Salah after that. Brothers and sisters, we're collecting for the Muharram fund. The cost of the Muharram program is approximately £6,500. If you'd like to make a donation, please speak to a member of the committee or make a donation on either the gents or the ladies side or online at sikkim.org.uk/give.